Hi everyone, my name is Hannah Ocker, and this presentation is focused on how juxtaposing religion and science enhances the supernatural narrative in Signs, which is a 2002 film directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Specifically in his film Signs, director M. Night Shyamalan utilizes the edge of construct in Plato's The Allegory of the Cave, metaphors and symbolism, and reflecting real-world ideology to contextually enhance the narrative or storytelling elements through juxtaposition and thus connect with wider audiences. In regard to the plot, the film Signs follows the protagonist, former Reverend Graham Hess, who is played by Mel Gibson, and his family in Pennsylvania, as they discover that aliens are leaving navigational patterns in their crop fields and must survive the unknowingly hostile alien encounter. In terms of concepts mentioned, the edge of construct is a narrative concept that depicts an internal world that is typically simulated or representative of a character's mind, as this is where the most internal growth takes place. Additionally, Plato's The Allegory of the Cave is a concept or thought experiment that describes how mental and emotional prisoners in a cave are one day freed and must process the outside world after being shown a false reality. Finally, author Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey describes a cycle of events that all narrative or cinematic heroes must undergo in order to become emotionally evolved or internally grow as a hero or protagonist. Primarily, Shyamalan uses a dynamic edge of construct paired with Plato's The Allegory of the Cave to juxtapose science with religion and thrust Graham into a heroic mindset, consequently enhancing the supernatural narrative by using the theme that connects with both science and religion: family. In regard to first confronting the edge of construct with storytelling, begin quote, teaching enables younger or less experienced group members to become better fitted to their community and thus be more successful in their responses to the ecological demands of their cultural niche throughout their lives, end quote. In the sign scene where Graham goes outside to feed the dogs, he is pictured staring into the cornfield and physically stepping into the edge of construct, which is the cornfield in this case, and encounters an alien in person for the first time. This scene is also indicative of how Graham must see the outside world, or outside of Plato's cave, very objectively in order to meet the rapidly changing ecological demands throughout the alien encounter, such as how he increasingly allows his son, Morgan, played by Rory Culkin, to read more scientific books, or allows Meryl, played by Joaquin Phoenix, to board up the windows to keep the evil aliens, I said that in air quotes, at bay instead of preying. Physically speaking, this scene visually begins the dynamic edge of construct, in which the edge of construct boundaries shrink as the narrative progresses, evidently zoning Graham and his family deeper into their house and places pressure on how these characters will navigate the upcoming narrative obstacles. By juxtaposing the previous comfort of religion and knowledge of science, Graham must dynamically implement both religion and science in order to efficiently prepare himself and his family for the obstacles ahead and expand upon their current cultural niche to fit the supernatural narrative. Therefore, this ideology enhances the narrative and storytelling elements by prompting Graham to suddenly believe in science through an encounter with an alien inside the edge of construct and make a critical choice: be honest with his family about what he just experienced, or play it cool to maintain that cultural niche. This enables Signs to connect with wider audiences through decision making and teaching others about evolving with the ecological demands, which transcends the juxtaposition of religion and science through storytelling and instead are utilized as themes to enhance the narrative contextually. In the Artifice article, the author describes how, begin quote, Plato went on to suggest that the cave was a metaphor for our own world, that there are concepts beyond our experience that are even more, air quote, real than the version of reality we observe regularly, end quote. The aforementioned scene from Signs is representative of Plato's cave because Graham is a metaphorical prisoner inside the cave of religion against science, and he must learn about the new scientific outside world quickly to protect his family. In addition, this same scene also represents the first threshold step of the hero's journey, particularly when Graham first decides to step into the cornfield and investigate the new version of reality with the air quote beyond real aliens that contest both science and religion. Graham must grow as a hero to grow congruently as a father, which contextually enhances the narrative by placing pressure on Graham to rework his mindset of the world and pursue the narrative obstacles head on as a hero, especially since he is directly motivated by his family. Ultimately, Shyamalan demonstrates heroic and fatherly growth through Graham by placing a religious father in a scientific, supernatural narrative that evidently connects with a wider audience through themes of family and teaching throughout the journey. Secondly, Shyamalan utilizes both religious and scientific metaphors and symbolism in Signs to enhance the narrative and connect with a wider audience, meaning that family themes and the storytelling capabilities are convincingly conveyed through symbolism. For instance, author Andrei Petraeus describes how, begin quote, cinema has continuously made efforts to create an environment in which the audience can experience untouchable events, end quote, especially when also considered in narratives that use themes of religion and science. This mindset directly connects to Bose, who's played by Abigail Breslin, to Bo's divine dream about Morgan dying early in the film, as this contextually enhances the narrative through foreshadowing and juxtaposition, where Morgan was reading a scientific book on extraterrestrials making tinfoil hats for the family. On the other hand, Bo is experiencing an air quote untouchable event that is similar to divine intervention or intuition, which is typically linked to religion and guardian angels, as Bo is able to warn Morgan based on an emotionally connected dream instead of a scientific basis that Morgan was actively searching for. In the foreshadowed final scene of the film, where the alien sprays Morgan with poisonous gas, Graham's family picks up on how Bo's, air quote, contaminated water problem actually injures the alien, particularly when Meryl knocks a glass over and burns the alien, and therefore it feels fated that her primary habit would help protect the family from hostile aliens. Throughout the film, Bo is depicted as an angel, or even guardian angel, since she is the daughter of a reverend, is pictured wearing a princess dress during a supernatural encounter, and leaves glasses of water around conveniently, which is implied to be holy water, metaphorically, due to the water symbolically burning the evil off of the alien. Visually seen in the scene's imagery, the evil alien is literally surrounded by Bo's holy water, with Bo always nearby to the characters involved, meaning that her narrative purpose is to inspire hope and remind others of family themes or value during unpredictable or potentially violent events. This ideology enhances the narrative by telling the story from her innocent perspective, such as how the audience is perceiving Meryl versus the alien as a protective, brotherly battle instead of a violent attack, since Meryl's actions allowed Morgan to be removed safely from the hands of the alien. Furthermore, the basement inside the house is symbolic of purgatory, as depicted religiously, and is the primary place where Bo was not leaving glasses of water around. Therefore, the entire family is representative of Dante Alighieri as they find a way to escape the dark, dangerous basement, which is also the third threshold step of the hero's journey. According to the Medium article by Dan Zimmerman, begin quote, by its very nature, science fiction is a great vehicle to project the fears and concerns of current societal changes, and one cannot argue that a key issue we face as a nation is the complete reimagination of the family in a technologically advanced society. End quote. During the basement scenes, Morgan is grabbed by an alien and is thankfully unharmed. However, the encounter scares him enough that it sparks an impromptu asthma attack, and the family is unable to obtain his medicine and inhaler from upstairs without risk. Thus, this emotional pressure enhances the supernatural narrative through the lack of access to modern medicine, science, and technology in general, as this places emphasis on how Morgan's family is placing their faith entirely in hope and religion to keep him alive in the absence of science. Since science is typically associated with survival and religion with comfort, this emphasizes both the positive connection and juxtaposition between science and religion and how these themes can be dynamically implemented to serve a symbolic purpose in the narrative, or bring out family themes in the science fiction genre. The metaphor of being locked into a purgatory, with the only resource being one's family, directly connects to the prior family themes, overcoming fear, and a wider audience through a supernatural narrative that places both characters and the audience in air quote untouchable events with familiar themes. Overall, Shyamalan's use of metaphors and symbolism in conjunction with religion and science enables the supernatural narrative to connect with more audiences beyond the original intended audience, resulting in the narrative themes being powerfully enhanced and displayed through juxtaposition of each character's worldviews. Finally, Shyamalan uses his supernatural film, Signs, as a mirror to reflect real-world ideologies, especially through religious and scientific lenses that evidently enhance the narrative and connect with wider audiences, which enables the characters and audience to emotionally connect through themes like family and fear. For example, author Ki Jun-ye describes, begin quote, film uses images, discourses, symbols, myths, and narrative to reflect social practices, ideology, ideas, values, customs, morals, and even law in contemporary society, end quote, which especially aids science fiction storytelling. With this in mind, film is both a physical and emotional mirror for all ideologies, where techniques like juxtaposition and symbolism contribute to a rich ideological narrative that exposes inner fears, perseverance, family themes, and more. This mindset is used in Signs, specifically in the scene where Graham and his family sit by the television and observe the supernatural chaos projected by the news outlets, where the children eventually fall asleep and leave Graham and Meryl alone to discuss their thoughts on the current situation. Fearful of the immediate future, Meryl asks Graham for some comforting words, since he is a former reverend, in which Graham takes this opportunity to connect with both Meryl's character and the audience, as he asks Meryl if he believes in the Christian concept of a miracle or the scientific anomaly of a coincidence. Fear is reflected in science fiction as a genre, but overcoming fear is shown using religion and science dynamically, such as in the top right image, where the scientifically represented characters are on the left and the religiously represented characters are on the right. Yet the context soon reveals that both sides are equally afraid of the immediate future. However, Meryl admits to being a miracle man, or taking the religious side, through a funny story, and Graham describes how he believes that, quote, there is no one watching out for us, end quote, implying that he now completely takes on the scientific mindset despite being a former reverend. meaning that the use of fear in the narrative inspired stubborn characters to emotionally reevaluate for comfort. Therefore, this scene juxtaposes religion with science to not only enhance the narrative, but to reflect real world ideologies back onto the audience and prompt real time reflection alongside the characters in order to find comfort, perseverance, and connect with the family themes shown. In addition, this scene connects with wider audiences through showcasing how, in times of fear and discomfort, not only is it perfectly normal to question ideology, but that it is most advantageous to dynamically implement opposing ideologies, such as religion and science, in order to seek the best outcome for motives like family or fear. By going in depth about the meaning of signs and symbols in cinema, author and assistant professor Muzaffer Musab Ilmaz of Trakya University illustrates, begin quote, even though the narrative is fictional, the signifiers of the imaginary become real people, things, or nature. This inevitably necessitates what is told in cinema must somehow refer to the real, end quote. Colleen, Graham's wife, gave Meryl the advice to swing away to motivate Meryl to kill the alien in the final scene and can be viewed from either ideology, where the religious perspective believes that she was destined to support her family that way, and the scientific perspective believes that she understood Meryl's best strength and wanted him to own his baseball skills for the benefit of his family. This additional scene reflects ideology by prompting the audience to interpret the journey through a chosen or combined lens, meaning that the audience will naturally connect with the journey and overall symbolism that resonates with one's worldview through various characters. Furthermore, the symbolic display of ideology and use of storytelling enhances the narrative and connects with wider audiences through the ideological themes, such as overcoming fear, seeking comfort, or even finding one's destiny in a supernatural good versus evil narrative. Lastly, Shyamalan uses themes of family and fear in conjunction with religious and scientific perspectives to reflect real-world ideologies from this time period back at the audience, consequently connecting with the audience through dynamic ideologies presented and personified by each character. Alas, Shyamalan's use of the edge of construct and Plato's The Allegory of the Cave, metaphors and symbolism, and reflecting real-world ideology connects with wider audiences through an enhanced supernatural narrative and ordinary themes, which makes science emotionally impactful. By using characters like Graham and Meryl, who must switch ideologies frequently, this enables the characters and journey to resonate with the audience, especially through themes of family and overcoming fear, and encourages the audience to reflect on the projected ideologies in the film. Similarly to the themes of family and fear, Shyamalan also connects with the audience through themes that transcend religion and science, such as comfort or perseverance, as the supernatural narrative projects these themes to be intentionally ordinary in a chaotic, unpredictable world that functions as the highest form of juxtaposition. Ultimately, the science fiction narrative and storytelling relates with the audience on the most fundamental level, as these narratives prompt the audience to reflect about current ideologies, decisions, and journeys in order to emotionally grow alongside the protagonist and implement the newly learned themes. I hope you enjoyed my critical analysis of signs, and if you wish to see the full work cited, take a look at the script and outline provided. Thanks for watching.